comment a little bit about when you take a look at these attributes, how offshore, cross geo development, how any of this might be applied, or?
So what happens when you have offshore cross geo development? Well, I think as an industry we're really kind of sorting out that issue now. Actually, the last time I gave a talk for the IEEE chapter, my subject was offshore outsourcing, and that was at least 5 years ago. I don't remember exactly. And it's funny because that talk, the lessons I would have described in that talk 5 years ago, I think we've learned a lot in the last 5 years about how to do that better. When I started Construx 14 years ago, we rarely worked with a company that was doing offshore development, and these days we rarely work with a company that's not doing offshore development. So that pattern has changed a great deal in the last decade or so. I guess in terms of this talk, the question really is, can you have a world-class software organization where you have people spread across lots and lots of different sites? And I think the answer is probably yes, but I think that you have to be doing it for the right reasons. I don't think you're going to get there through outsourcing. I think as an industry we've accumulated enough experience that says that's just not going to work. So you're going to get there through having offshore captives. And then I think the question is, okay, well, what are the factors that make that work? I think if you're doing it to save money, that's one of the factors that means it's probably not going to work. And one of the things we've seen this year that I think has been especially damaging is that companies that went offshore to save costs, as they've gone through budget tightening over the last year, an additional way they decided to save costs is to cut travel. This is like the absolute worst thing you could possibly do if you want to get any kind of results out of your offshore group, is to reduce the amount of face-to-face time and so on that people get. So it's like, yeah, you can save costs by going offshore if you do it for the right reasons, but you're going to have to pay some of it back to make it work at all, and part of that's going to be a fairly significant amount of travel. I think a lot of it is very much a case of the devil's in the details. We've seen companies that use their offshore capabilities pretty well, but if they're doing it really well, it's because they're a company like Intel, which has grown organically at sites throughout the world. They don't set up a site in Ireland or a site in India, a legitimate site that's going to do the same kind of work the other sites are doing. Another company we work with that's like that is Schlumberger in the oil and gas industry. They have many sites throughout the world in places like China, India, Norway, Texas, Calgary, and so on. And it's the same kind of thing. They don't really have a notion of they don't even really have a notion of a home base. They are a multinational company with somewhat equal presence at these various sites around the world. And so I think anytime you set it up as, here's the home base, and then here are these sort of satellite offices that are second class, that's probably a recipe for not doing well. So I guess kind of what I'm saying is I think I could tell you how to mess it up pretty conclusively. I'm not sure at this point in time I could tell you how to make it work.
You start circling some of these bullet points when you listen to the way that people use offshoring and saying, how do you get commitment out of people treating them that way? And how are you going to get a strong sense of mission with a big, long, disconnected pipe between you and your offshore group?
Yeah, and the other factor that we see commonly is not giving them enough work to do, or the right kind of work to do. How are you going to get a strong sense of mission when you draw them a box that's this big and they don't really understand how your business works? That's a real common issue. Okay. Anything else?
Where would you place the user? Because I'm looking at this list from the standpoint of more of a layperson, and I see a lot of internal. And you mentioned, and I hate to bring it up, and I'm saying all it over here. You mentioned the new version of Word. As a layperson, and I work at a library where we get a lot of people that come in that have real difficulty because the changes were so drastic. When a lot of people that use Word like the way it was before, so coming from a lay perception, I see that and I think, how much usability study was in there? How much of a community assessment was there saying, what does the user really want? So for me, a world-class software organization, one of the things that would be on there, and I don't know if it's on there, but it's under like commitment to quality, would be also focusing on the user and where the product is going to go, and not just the actual design of the product itself.
Yeah, so early in the talk I said I think that to be a world-class software organization, kind of the motherhood and apple pie is projects that are on time, or on schedule, on budget, with desired functionality, and so on. So I think that with desired functionality part is in my mind kind of a given. And I think the market ends up giving you pretty clear feedback on that, right? If you release Windows Vista and everybody in the world hates it and you get horrible reviews, then various people get reorged and fired, and the company doesn't make anywhere near as much money. There's some pretty clear market feedback there. Is usability by itself one of the, is it the main factor or the only factor? I don't think so. I mean, one of the things we've seen over the years in the software world is products leapfrog each other, right? And so if you're ahead for 6 months, that's great, but if somebody else is then ahead for the next 2 years, then it's not so great. And likewise, if you're ahead for 6 months and then you say, okay, now we're going to release in a year, but you release in 2 years, you might release with great functionality, but you've blown all your credibility in the year that you were not releasing. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into making the business successful, and the software usability is part, but the on-time, on-budget stuff is also a part. And then I think too
And that also pleases the user. That it comes back, if something's on time, if it works right, because they're the ones that are going to be spending the money on the project, so that all ties, that's the way I look at it, is the importance of the user perspective and creating a quality user experience, because they're the ones that are going to be spending the money they're going to bring back to the product.
yeah, I think it's definitely part of the picture. Yeah.
On your first bullet item there, top talent, it's kind of an interesting, at least this is my experience with Microsoft in particular, was that I would interview a lot of people who are coming in from overseas, and they have a different cultural background, and their ability to assimilate and be assimilated into the Microsoft culture was somewhat difficult, especially, I knew a fair number of Japanese people, very good people, very talented, and they were not confrontational like Microsoft expected.
Yeah.
As a consequence, they were not given positions yet. So what I'm saying, Microsoft was bypassing those people because they did not fit into the cultural mold that they had. And now that they're trying to go more towards being international for all the companies, I don't see how they're, how do you pick up that talent? How do you evaluate, is this person really good?
Yeah.
And do they fit into the local organization? In other words, there is a local culture. Microsoft Redmond has a culture that's different than the one in Beijing,
Yeah.
for example.
Well, that issue comes up a lot in an acquisition context. We've done increasing amounts of work over the last few years in the technical due diligence space. So companies who are acquiring another company will hire us to take a look at the target company, and part of it is to look at their processes, and a lot of the time it's to look at their architecture and code, and they're concerned about the issue of taint. The target company is worried about them stealing their code if they see it, so they hire us as a third party to go in and look at it and not tell the acquiring company any of the important details.